Yeah, I hope that everybody, you may be having your lunch, maybe in front of the computers. And this is one of the luxuries of having an online session. Yeah. So you can multitask, but hopefully it's, your multitasking will allow you to participate actively in the session today. Because it's going to be a really, really special session. This session is on women and data. And that's why you see that, there's 3 women in the session, but, we believe in diversity, of course. And so we have one gentleman on the session too. And over the next hour or so, we're going to be hearing from them. All 3 of them come from diverse backgrounds. So it's really, really going to be rich insights that we get. And I hope everybody is ready to participate actively. As you know, we have a comment section, and you can feel free to speak up, raise your hand, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, so on the panel with me today, we have Dr. Jaspal, yeah, and Dr. Jaspal is a senior lecturer at the Department of Law at Help University. Incidentally, Dr. Jaspal, Help is also one of the premier digital tech institutions, and we work closely with your School of Business and Computer Science. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Happy to have you on the panel. We also have Dr. Fairoza, who is the ambassador for Women in AI Malaysia chapter. Yeah, so she is, my hats off to you, Dr. Fairoza, because you are in a land where there's not very many women, right? And so you must be a trailblazer, and I salute you for that. And then we have Quiron Aguiar, who is the Senior Strategy Director at ZALORA. And of course, all us women love ZALORA. And Quiron is going to give us some insight. So maybe that's why we allowed you into the panel, because you know women, right?
It could hope so.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the 4 of them, the 3 of them on the panel, and now I'd like to invite each of them to just share a little bit about what they do, their role, and perhaps in relation also to data, and how that plays a part in their roles. So maybe we can start with we'll start with the gentleman, since I introduced you last, I'll give you the chance first now. So Quiron, can you share with us a little bit about your role? Thank you.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I think it's an honor. And to be honest, I hope I can contribute, but I can also learn a lot during the session. I think that should be the intent for all of us. I'm the Senior Director for Strategy at ZALORA. And within strategy, we have different departments, being one of those data and innovation. So we call it Data Lab and Innovation. That takes care of, in one hand, everything related to data science, everything related to BI, and enabling the democratization of data across ZALORA. In another side, everything that is related, how can we innovate using the data across? We built some different products. I can speak about it later, being one of those Trender, for example, that it's a data solution that we provide to our brand partners. So that's a bit of my role over there. And I try to help as much as possible also to do a bit of the connection between data and business. So I'm not originally from a data field. I'm originally more from a business field, and that's a bit of the idea of having this under strategy as well. Because one of the key goals that we have, it's how can we not only have the data and making sure that we have those touch points, but how can we actually bring data to the business, bring data to really be used on the day-to-day. So that's a bit about the role and the data and innovation that we're having today at ZALORA. And thanks again for the invite here.
Thank you, Quiron. Really interesting that you're from a non-tech, or even a non-data background. And I guess that's the point. The point is that there's actually a very low entry barrier, as long as we're willing to learn and we're open to embracing what this new technologies and AI holds. There's really opportunity for everybody. It's a level playing field. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that. On to Dr. Fairoza. Would you like to share a bit? I'm sure everybody is wondering, what does an ambassador for the Women in AI Malaysia chapter do? We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah, it's not coming through. Maybe we'll go to Dr. Jaspal and then we'll come back to you. So meanwhile, perhaps you can try. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sumitra. Thank you for that very nice welcome and a special mention to the university. I'm sure my Vice Chancellor will be very, very, happy with that, very chuffed with that. Dr. Sumitra, I am a lawyer, an academic lawyer by training, in practice before, but I've been an academic for longer than I would have liked to be, which is 25 years, and I have a very keen interest in technology, law, and how law intersects with technology. But in the last 1.5 years, I have been exploring the relationship with data and AI, and the relationship of data and AI with ethics and law. With everything that is emerging, law is very slow to respond. So I am championing a platform to discuss ethics, data ethics, in the context of how it intersects with society. And for me, I'm very keen on this concept of altruistic AI. So if anybody is using AI, I'm very keen on it, whether it's trustworthy, whether it's altruistic, whether it's state actors or non-state actors, or companies like ZALORA, for example. I'm very keen to know about the reason I agreed, and I want to thank Shariman, who's in the background. We always forget the people in the background, so I want to thank him and MDEC for inviting me, because I think this area of women and data is very important, because the need to empower women, the need to be aware of the rights. And also, as you know, I'm very keen to talk about why is there a shortage of women in data science, for example? Are women more ethically inclined? So they should be really playing a very important role in data science, or anything to do with information technology for that matter. Yeah.
Great, Dr. Jaspal. I can't wait to get into the questions later, because I think you bring a very different perspective. Yeah. So we have somebody from the business background embracing data, somebody from the law background embracing and understanding what the impact is and what the implications are of open data and so on. Yeah. So wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Fairoza, do we have you back online? Can you try speaking? Okay, I don't hear you. How about the rest of my panelists? Can you hear her? We can't hear you.
Dr. Fairoza can refresh the browser.
Okay, all right. So I guess she'll try and refresh her browser and come back in. But while we're waiting for her, perhaps I can just kick off with Dr. Jaspal, because you opened this topic of ethics, right? And I think this is a topic which is very relevant, especially right now. I mean,
okay, can you hear me?
Pandemic.
They're not here.
You're back online.
Hello.
Yes, I can.
Hello,
hear
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. Finally, sorry about that.
No problem. Dr. Jaspal will come back to you.
Yeah, sorry for the.
Dr. Fairoza, can you perhaps just introduce a little bit about what you do as
okay. My name is Fairoza. Hamzah.
Okay, she's freezing up on me.
So what is okay, so we want to improve their exhibition freezing. Everyone stop my video. Like if I stop my video, is it okay? Can you hear me? No.
It's very jerky.
Can you hear me, guys? No?
Now we can. Yeah, maybe if you switch off your video.
Very jerky, yeah. I think that because the network is not very good.
Dr. Fairoza, please switch off your video.
I will switch off my
Just
video.
make your audio.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead,
Then
Dr.
it's okay
Fairoza.
currently?
Yes, it's wonderful. Yes, it's much better.
Okay.
Do feel free to introduce yourself.
It's much better. Okay, yeah. Okay, my name is Fairoza Amira binti Hamzah. I'm a Women in AI ambassador for Malaysia. And previously, I'm also a Women in AI ambassador for Japan. So what Women in AI do is we want to improve our women participation in AI and data science. We're not focusing on tech only, but also in entrepreneurship and also the sales, marketing, business people. So this is what we do in Women in AI. So that is our main aim lah. Okay? Oh.
Yes, okay, great, thank you.
Yes,
So, Dr. Fairoza, I know you said that your aim is to increase the participation of women in data and AI. Interestingly, if you look at the statistics globally, it still shows that women participation is still fair. Oh, did we lose her? Is Dr. Fairoza online? Okay, so I hope you can hear me. Dr. Fairoza, are you online? Okay, I don't see her, so I don't think she's online. Right. And can our backstage guys just look into that while we proceed with the rest, yeah? Because I am aware that we're on a time limit here. Okay, so I'll get back to Dr. Jaspal then. Dr. Jaspal, we were talking about ethics and data, right? And during this pandemic, yes, we can hear you. I'll come back to you in a bit, yeah? Dr. Fairoza, just started with Dr. Jaspal. So during this pandemic, of course, we see there's a spike in the volume of data that's being put out there. Just take us even, every store that we walk into, we are scanning our MySejahtera, right? So which means that even our movements, the data on our movements, the time we're moving, where we're moving, all of that is now in the cloud somewhere. And so, and I think with this data that's out there now, there is also a growing awareness around the importance of data ethics, privacy, and so on. To what extent do you see that in Malaysia? Are Malaysians aware, about issues around ethics and privacy? Is there enough awareness?
That's a very good question, Dr. Sumitra, to kick it off, because I think, women represent a large population of, Malaysia. And often it is probably a situation where women are contributing a lot of data to what is, big data. And in terms of, how data fuels technology today, they say data is the new oil, AI is the new electricity. I'm not sure whether you find these analogies appealing. I think they're a little glib. But I think data can also be very, very useful in a public health crisis like what we're doing. And it's a very good question you're asking me, because that's the next paper that I'm writing for the Malayan Law Journal. I convene a series of articles for the Malayan Law Journal on AI law and ethics. And that's a paper that I'm writing on. And I'm comparing the system here in Malaysia and in the UK. And in terms of, tracking and tracing apps, we are so easily giving up our data, but we're not asking the right questions. So, for example, what happens to our data? Who gets our data? So if you subscribe to an app like MySelangkah or MySejahtera app, they give you the assurance your data will not be shared. But, unfortunately, there's not much in terms of, in terms of the app, there might be some kind of, responsibility on the part of, government or the Selangor state government in the case of MySelangkah. But what about, those, I'm sure a lot of you, when you go to the restaurant or to the cafe or to the supermarket, the grocery shop, which has become the most exciting journey in our lives, right? Just going to get our groceries in this pandemic. So some of us, for example, we're a bit too lazy to scanning the app. And so what do? We write into that big, thick, bulging book of details. Now, what happens to that book? There are no regulations. There are no bylaws. Much less individuals being aware, Dr. Sumitra, and to the audience who are listening in. I think even our governments, our small and medium-sized businesses are not aware as to what they're supposed to be doing. How do they manage that information responsibly? And I call this, in terms of apps, this is a little bit more sensitive because we're talking about health data, medical data, albeit not primary data, but what we call secondary health data. And although there are flagships and discussions and rolled out there on data sharing, but it's really surprising when people in Parliament say, "Oh, you don't worry, there's a Personal Data Protection Act." But you know what? Unfortunately, the Personal Data Protection Act doesn't apply to the government, and it only applies in a commercial environment. So if our parliamentarians don't know what they're talking about, and including our ministers, imagine the situation with the man on the street.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a lack of awareness. Yeah.
I can imagine. But interestingly, when you were introducing yourself, you made a statement that I think is relevant to today's topic. Women are known to be more ethical, right? And so with all of this that's happening, what role do you see women playing in, upholding or even strengthening addressing this topic of data ethics?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to, for example, if you find women have a very interesting role to play as contributors of the economy. Just think about how people are at home in the pandemic. It's the women who are shopping for their children. So ZALORA is most interested in that. It's always the women shopping for themselves, shopping for their families, shopping for their children. They are the providers of the family. And there's a very silent economic value as to what women do, especially in the pandemic and all the various hats they have to wear. Educators, caregivers, the personal cook, the personal shopper, and the working woman. So in terms of the kind of data that is generated by that one individual in the family, as far as big data sets go, a woman is a very great contributor to those data sets. And why are those data sets important? Those data sets are important because we get to make policies for women. We get to train our AI so that we predict what women want to shop, what women need. So women have to be very much aware, as they're aware of their rights at the workplace, as they're aware of their rights at home, in cases of domestic violence, domestic abuse, rights as a wife, rights as a mother, as a caregiver. They must also be aware that they are essentially a huge contributor to data production. And that's on one side, that's in the personal capacity, but there's also the other capacity. Women are seen as, more slower in decision making because perhaps they will be a bit more careful. There are studies on that. So their role in, for example, Dr. Fairoza as a data scientist, as someone who's in AI, someone who's in the IT field, what is the contribution that women have? Is they add diversity of view. And you mentioned that, and I was very excited when you said that, because that is very important. Diversity.
Yes. Can you repeat again?
Yes, you're back online.
Yes. I'm using the landline. The technical team is helping me. So sorry about all the...
No problem. We're so happy to have you back, and I think you came in right at the right time because we were just talking about how important women's role is in data ethics, not just from a personal point of view, but from a professional point of view. How if you have women who are taking up data professions or AI professions, they can bring their inherent strong value system and the whole orientation for ethics, right, to that role, and thereby playing a bigger part. But I wanted to talk to you, Dr. Fairoza, about your role, because you are one of few women. In fact, according to the World Economic Forum's recent report, only 1 in 4, around 1 in 4 people in data and AI are women. Workers, those professionals in data and AI, only 1 in 4 are women. So that's 25%, right? So despite the work that, you've been doing with the women in AI and so on, can you shed some light on why it's so low? And what can be done to boost participation of women in this role?
Back to the topic, like the woman, how it is important for women to become a data scientist is like this. If you have a bias in the perception of the data, like the data is being generated, we visualize the data by using the computers and everything, but then it's back to the human that gives the intuition and insight for the data. So if you have all the males as a data scientist, then you have everything that is very biased to the males. It's the same like if you want to make face app, something like that is full of white people or maybe Westerners or maybe Chinese people, then you won't have anyone from your own country, something like that. So that's how it was important as why women need to be venture into this field. Is it clear? Hello?
Dr. Sumitra, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. We can hear you for the most part, Dr. Fairoza. You can...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can I just weigh into what Dr. Fairoza said? Can I just weigh in a little bit?
Sure.
I think in terms of, Dr. Fairoza, you mentioned about, biased data and data that is not diverse and not pluralistic. I think that's very important because when AI is learning, it is enabled by something called hyperparameters, okay? And these are set by human beings in order for the AI to learn. So at the end of the day, there is the human being in the process. Many people think about AI as something very scientific, sci-fi, whereas you realize it involves with a lot of, human intervention. And, but the thing with AI is also the fact that, it uses big data. So how you curate, how you label the data, how you collect the data, for example. If there is no diversity, then how can it work?
Yeah.
Somebody said that, data science and AI is not a science, it's an alchemy because you need to continue to calibrate, consistently calibrate. So the human input, therefore, is very important. And it's, shocking. Thanks, Dr. Sumitra, for sharing that, 1 out of 4, women only are data scientists, 1 out of 4, and I'm actually very curious, Dr. Sumitra, to know who in ZALORA is writing up their programs. And
I was going to ask the same thing. So now, we're sort of down this path talking about the need for diversity and women's perspective as you build those algorithms that, capture data and insights from data. How is this dealt with in ZALORA, especially because your primary audience and target customers are women? Is this something which is integrated into how you look at data in ZALORA?
No, absolutely, and thanks for the question, and also to bring this through, because I think that's a very important topic. Not only when we talk about diversity, but also in light to the business. I mean, I completely agree that if we don't have diversity, the truth is that it's bias. We're going to have always the same idea. We're going to have always the same point of view. At ZALORA, to your point, I think here we're not lucky, but I think it was a good work in the sense we do have a good split between women and men, especially on the tech landscape. It's almost half-half. On the data side, I think we still I'm sure we still need to improve a bit, but it's something around 30 to 40%. But it's still, in comparison to the overall, I might say that it's high. But I think that's a big learnings that the company needs to start having. And I think, luckily, being at ZALORA today, I can see how important that is, because I think the point about bias, especially when it comes, as you said, on the fashion landscape, you're completely right. Although the men's are increasing the participation on the fashion, which is great as well, because it shows that the men's are understanding that, fashion, beauty, self-care is not a thing about men and women. It's a thing that everyone should be concerned and should be engaging on. But I think it is still a majority of women on the fashion landscape. So if you want to make sure that we provide a good customer experience, if we want to make sure that we understand our consumers, we also need a thought that understands the woman ecosystem, that understands a bit of the behavior. Because as you said, I completely agree. At the end of the game, sometimes I feel people think on data as something that, all the computers are going to do it, and it's a very geek thing that you're just looking to a screen. But the truth is, and that is something that I really believe on, that what really matters when the data is how you analyze the data and bring this data to become a real practices on the day-to-day of the customer. How can you offer something to them? So at the end of the game, there are a lot of human interaction. Although part of it, it's going to be processed by a computer, there is human input, adding the inputs of the computer. There are humans debating the conclusion of the data and creating actions to the customer, because I think that's the most important. So I completely agree. I think, although I'm saying here that ZALORA, we have a good amount of humans, I think we still have a lot of room to improve, especially into the leadership positions. So I think this is something that all the companies, they need to learn. They need to start working and they need to start changing it now, because, again, not only because it's the right thing to do as a society point of view, but also because it drives to a better economics, because you have a more diversity point of view of thinking, and you also have a more understanding of your different customers, which then at the end of the game will make you drive to a better decision. So absolutely, I think, again, although I'm saying that we do have, I think there are a lot of room for improvement, and we need to keep doing, having these types of conversations internally and pushing this through. I think you're on mute, Dr. Sumitra.
Sorry. Thank you for that. And still on ZALORA's experience, right? Because I am aware that there could be some small business owners or even some bigger business owners who are on the call. How have you used data to help drive your business growth? Bearing in mind that your primary audience are women.
No, that's actually a very, very good point. So let me use some examples of COVID. So maybe using some use case that make it easier. I think data, and we say data is the new gold and that, but the truth is that the reason why we say data is the new gold is because there's so many informations that we can collect if we touch point to the right data that help us to, drive the right behavior, drive the right strategy for the organization. So using some examples, one that I love is the beauty category during COVID. So when COVID started, everyone was locked in their house. And I think the first thought that came when you talk about beauty, it was, okay, it's going to be a category that it's going to shrink a bit because people are not going to go through beauty now that they're. And actually we saw a completely different trend. We saw actually beauty exploding to happen. Reason why when we saw that first, what is the hypothesis that we have behind it? Is that given that people have a bit more time to take care of themselves without the traffic jam, commuting to work and all of these things, they realize, hey, I should take care of myself. I do have a bit more time. Let me do it at home. So same happened with the sports. So we see some sports accessories categories growing a lot. But in terms of business, what this drove for us, it was when we suddenly saw the data, say, hey, we need to act fast. So we need to offer beauty in a more exponential way. We need to improve our assortment. So although we were growing, so beauty was already a category that we were investing some time ago, but we saw that category exponentially growing and said, hey, what is the easiest way for increasing the assortment and increasing the proposition to the company? So again, I think on one hand, you have to have the data and you have to have, an environment that enables you to bring this insight to the table. And you also have to have an organization that receive this data openly and act inside the data. So what we did was we moved a lot of our, acquisition team to say, hey, let's onboard more players on the beauty spectrum because we do have an opportunity to fulfill our customers here. So I think that's one it's a nice use case, but also a very important point about how can we have in one hand the data and analyze it in a better way, but also have an organization that is prepared to receive this data and this insight and act on top of it. And that's why I was explaining a bit at the beginning, the reason why data is actually inside the strategy is exactly because of it, because what we want is to create an environment here in which we have the insights and this is going to drive directly as a opportunity and as an action to the company. And maybe just to add another use case that is interesting, it's regarding to sustainability. I think it is still a topic that unfortunately it's not a massive trend, so it's not that a lot of people are already purchasing and open to this. But I think when we look to the data, so we did some surveys directly to the customers, because also to the point, not all the data we're going to be able, and not all the behaviors are going to be able to have just by, following the trends and following the behaviors of the website. So we did some of these surveys, and what we saw is that a massive amount of our customers are willing to buy sustainable products if it's easier for them. So if the discovery is easy. So for example, we added, it's not a button, it's a tag that calls Earth Added, in which you can filter only the sustainable products and find that out. So what we saw is that if the experience is good, if you help the customer to go to sustainable, there are huge opportunity there, and we can drive this opportunity also for this direction. Another example of sustainability is we saw that people are willing to pay 5%. It doesn't seem a lot, but it's a huge difference. They're willing to pay 5% more for a sustainable product. So when we look to this data, it's also a way to push the sustainable brands, and even the, as of today, not sustainable brands say, hey, there is an opportunity here. Let's invest together. So again, I think there are a lot of data already available. There are a lot of data that we need to collect to have a better understanding of the customers, and we can do it throughout surveys. We can do it throughout also gamification and different ways of collecting this. But I think equally important is that having the right tools and bringing the data at some point, but equally creating the ecosystem inside the company and transforming the company to a more digital and data mindset. So then you can make this data insights really becoming a practice and really becoming the day and the norm at the company.
Thank you. So I think that, really talks about the importance of not just collecting the data, but and analyzing it, but allowing those analysis to bring out insights, which can then help to drive the business growth, right? And to hopefully drive it sustainably too. Yeah. So that's really, really interesting. And, for the women on the call, right? It's obvious that there are so many interesting aspects to data, right? And so, again, it goes back to one wonders why is it that the participation of women in these data roles are still low? And so that's something I want to pose to Dr. Fairoza at this point, yeah? Why, Dr. Fairoza, do you think women participation in data and AI roles are still low, especially not just in Malaysia, but even, I guess, globally?
Okay, for me, if you can see in Malaysia, actually we are quite good for the number of men and female in the field of data science. But if you go to another country, it's still quite low. But at the sense also, it's like most of the women, they tend to go for academic position compared to industrial position if in the data science industry. So the main reason for why they have become I think most of the women, they are very if you see if they have family, then they will have more focus to the family. It's a part of career. But another thing, I was thinking maybe they are not very encouraging enough to go into a new field, something like that. So this is what we need. This is why we came as Women in AI. We want to encourage more young ladies out there to go coming into a data science and AI field. It's not very something that is so terrifying field that is very difficult. Actually, if you are from different background, also you can join the data science field as long as you have the willing to study.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point because maybe, based on what you're saying, perhaps women think it's something which requires a lot of heavy technical knowledge, or very sort of high-end programming knowledge and so on, right? Whereas, as we've heard today, in the field of business, in the field of law, it's applicable to so many different areas, and we don't need to really be afraid of getting into the space. And it can be something which is quite creative as well. Yeah, it can be quite creative because, you think about data visualization, you think about how you actually use the insights to influence the business. It can be quite interesting. But, and I want to ask Quiron, for example, right? What do you think from a man's point of view? And maybe, also because you have, you address women, what do you think can be done to encourage more women? Or in your organization, what have you done to encourage more women to take on these data-related roles?
No, it's a very good question. And to be honest, a question that I think it doesn't apply only for data, but it applies for diversity as a whole. I think as leaders, the first thing is that And it can't be something that just the women are pushing or the diversity groups are pushing. I think as leaders, we all need to push the discussion. So I think first things first is, to have the courage to put the problem on the table, to debate the problem, and to really bring the topic to be discussed across all the organization. So I think as a leader, that needs to be the first step. It's not the only, but it needs to be the first. So we need to make sure that, we are all prepared to debate. We're all prepared to understand. I mean, one thing that even more in the past, we hear, we have to have the best profile. That's true. But we also have to think that, it's the best profile is not necessarily the profile that has, only one award here or there. It's, it's a conjuncture of people. So I think one thing that the leaders also need to start thinking and understanding is that diversity is not, again, just a matter that we need to bring because it is the right thing to be done. And I think we need to be clear that it is the right thing to be done in a society point of view. But we need also to start being clear that, if we don't have a diversity group, we won't have the best results. We won't have the best economics. So I think as leaders, I think education is the key. So first things first, once you understand it, we need to have the compromise of going leader by leader and saying, hey guys, we're doing it wrong. We're not being diverse at all. We need to increase it. And we have to have the courage to say it and to change our acts in order to bring this through. So I think the organizations, they need to fulfill the leadership positions with more women. I think that's the first step. And across this wave of, women's leadership, I really believe that, it's at the end and bringing the discussion, things are going to happen. And on top of it, I think also there are some other things that we need to do on the day-to-day. So we have to encourage training. We have to encourage, bringing people that are on the starting positions and really invest on these people so they can reach to leadership positions. So I don't think we can use an excuse to not having this. The truth is that we need to face a problem and we need, to really invest our energies to make this change. And it needs to start from all the leaderships and across all the organizations. And the ones that understood it need to fight and need to work together to make the change.
Thank you, Quiron. Dr. Jaspal, would you like to weigh in on that question? How do you see this? How can we get more women to be involved in being interested, like you? You're somebody from outside the space. What made you get interested in data and AI, and how can we get other women interested in data and AI?
I think mine is quite a very personal journey. At the age of 12, in the early 1980s, I think I had a mother who was a visionary. And in our secondary school, we had a computer lab. And you had to contribute a small amount of money to be part of the computer club in I'm giving away my age now, 1983. So this is the other thing, the encouragement within the family itself. So I think in my personal journey, I ended up becoming a lawyer because if you're Punjabi, you're Sikh, you're stereotyped, you're either in medicine or law. But I never gave up my aspirations to understand technology. I mean, so the computer scientists and computer programmers in the audience would know, we used to do things like BASIC, Pascal, Fortran, these basic languages. So for me, it was just that my head was just, wired in a way that I quite pretty much appreciated technology. So I think it starts with education, and that's to take on the point that Quiron is making, that, at the end of the day, it's education at the grassroots level, that girls should be empowered. And I'm sure, Dr. Sumitra, I think a year or two ago, I think your CEO and the then women's minister, I think, had signed up these initiatives to encourage women to come on. And I think it has to start at the grassroots level. It has to start with the mothers encouraging their daughters not to stereotype professions. So I think that's the thing. It's a very personal journey for me. And when I started to embark on my postgraduate course, and I remember finding this book in 1998 in a bookshop called Cyber Law, and I was thinking, that's it. My love and my interest for technology can be merged. And I think that's the other thing. The stereotyping, they're putting everybody in silos. Lawyers are lawyers, techies are techies, business people are business people. So we got to start changing our mindset as well. Girls are good at this, boys are good at that. Just look at the controversy about Harry Styles wearing a dress in the front cover of a magazine. It's that kind of stereotyping that I think we have to move away from. I'm not telling, parents, please start putting dresses onto your sons. That's not my point. I'm sure ZALORA will be very happy, but no. Okay. I believe that there must be a kind of social engineering, and I think we have to start with that. And coming as my second hat is my third hat after lawyer, ethicist, educator. I think a lot has to do with the education blueprint, when you're talking about pushing girls. And the fact is this, whether you want to accept it or not, a larger proportion of students in university are girls, and so what are we doing? Why are we not thinking about what this nation needs and that we need to push forward, with that sort of agenda? So again, while bottom-up leadership with mothers and fathers and schools is important, but we need a top-down leadership as well. We need policies in place. We need this push. Otherwise, we're already in a race where we are catching up, and, the greatest asset of a nation is its youth, and we need to get our girls, okay, those, but I can't remember what is the percentage or statistics of girls in universities. So we need to push those initiatives, and they're not rocket science. These are initiatives that are not going to cost millions. It comes down to just a little bit of social engineering with student counselors in schools. It can be done. It's actually a zero cost, initiative. And so I think, everybody has a role to play in this. And I think a lot of the time, if I can just make another comment, I'm quite mindful of the comments that are coming through, and some of them are asking questions. Just one small comment. I think there's always been this mindset in the context of women coming up to the playing field that, it's a man's world. So, you got to ape men? No, I'm sorry. Women have to be told that the innate diversity they bring, their innateness, the qualities that they bring. Up here we are wired differently. So mentally, physiologically, biologically, women are wired differently. And going back to this importance of diversity and plurality, I think not much is talked about in our country about the value and the richness of diversity and plurality. And I think if we can just do that a little bit more to say that this is the real asset of this nation. They are girls working with their boys. And I think the diversity of different races and cultures and languages, I think that needs to be thought about. Even within women of different backgrounds bring such richness to, the canvas that is Malaysia.
That's amazing. Lots of, that was a very loaded sharing, because, there's so many points that I picked up from there. And again, building on what Quiron was saying as well, I think the point about education cannot be overstated. Yeah, it's extremely important, and it really starts at home. We mothers, women who are at home, sisters, we have a role to play just as much to debunk this myth that technology or data or AI or anything like that is a man's domain. Yeah, we have that role to play. That's one. The other point I picked up is hybrid. Yeah, we need to have hybrid skills, right? And we can't pigeonhole anybody into a certain segment. And it reminds me of my own journey, because I did a degree in economics, and at one point I was interested in environmental science, and so I applied to a local university to do my master's in environmental science, and they turned me down. And they said it was because your first degree was nothing to do with environmental science or even science, right? And so there you go. But maybe just as well that I didn't do that. So you're very right. The whole area of hybrid, right, skills is extremely important now more than ever. The other point that you made was women in universities. And interestingly, it's not just having more women in universities, but even in STEM disciplines, there are more women in Malaysian universities pursuing STEM than guys. But what's even more interesting is the percentage flips as they enter the workforce. So the boys take over, and they actually continue on with careers in STEM, whereas women, as what Dr. Fairoza was saying, women who took on those degrees tend to then, switch to non-tech roles. They end up becoming academics and, other areas where they're not really practicing what they've learned in university, or they just pick something else. So those are really, really important points that were made. I want to go to the comments because there's actually quite a lot of questions here. So good that we addressed, because we've got 15 minutes. Yeah. So I have a question here from Sunita. Women, and this is for Dr. Jaspal. Women and data. Is there any law protecting the people against unethical data use? What can we do if we find our data is being used unethically to protect ourselves? Dr.
Thanks, Sunita, for that question. And that's a question I'm often asked, what is the position of unethical data? So in terms of law, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Personal Data Protection Act, but that is very limited. It's limited to commercial enterprises only, or commercial transactions. So what if data is collected in another context? So what if data is collected at the level of employment, let's say, or let's say health data, or data that's collected by governments, government agencies, for example. So we are short on the law as far as, issues surrounding collection of data unethically. We are short. But whatever it is, the principles that are found in the Personal Data Protection Act are there. But the question is enforcement. People are not sure what to do when their rights are being abrogated. Okay, so this is a question that often comes up. What do I do? Go I go to the Consumer Tribunal? Do I go and make a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner? And the point that you're saying, there's a follow-up to you, and you're saying that what can we do if we find our data is being used unethically? Now, there is no go-to person here. So in a sense, we have to think about, again, national policies. As far as, if there are any issues or disputes about collection of data, often people go back to the seller or the website host or the platform, and they're hoping to get some sort of a consumer relief. But on rights-based discussions, I mean, if you want to argue that this, takes away your human right under the Constitution, very little of it is happening in Malaysia. But that does not mean that the conversations are not there. So that is why I'm always championing that we need a national policy, on data. We need a national policy on collection of data. We need a national policy as to how that data is being used, for example, in artificial intelligence. So that is something that is lacking. So it is not a good place. I cannot really give you some happy news in respect to that question. Unfortunately, it is dark.
Hopefully we are at the early stages of, I would say, work in progress. Hopefully, even if it's not fully, fully deep in implementation, but hopefully, I think this pandemic, in a way, will also bring that kind of awareness, and hopefully something will start to be done. I want to go to Dr. Fairoza with one of the questions here from actually my ex-colleague, Sharifa Nur Isma, who I know is with an AI company. And the question here, Dr. Fairoza, for you is, there is a need to elevate role models, build an army of advocates, and overhaul the image of women professionals in data and AI. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, we need to elevate that, seriously. So this is what we are doing. Like, if you see women in AI session, I think on August for Medical Special Session, we have a bunch of very awesome women in the field to give a sharing session, free and mentoring to them. So it's this is how we are trying to collect in our core members itself. We have that, but I would say it's actually the courage and determination that will give the women to pursue their long-term career. So it's if you are not very determined enough to become a data scientist, then even though you have a very high prominent people that will mentor you, but you still didn't go so far, something like that. But we have the database. This is some kind of data ethics as well. We have the prominent women in AI field all over the world in women in AI platform, and we have a Malaysian as well, Malaysian database, and Japanese, Japan, and all over the world. It was if you want them to give actually we are in the planning as well in under women in AI to have to train the high school students to be more related to AI course, something like that. It's in our program. So if you are very interested with women in AI, join us because there you can find a very good support system for this field.
There you go. So we're very action oriented, yeah. So Sharifah or anybody else, if you are interested in advocating the role of women in data and AI, please do reach out to Dr. Fairoza, yeah. Thanks for that, Dr. Fairoza. Quiron, we have a question for you as well. Women and data, a question is, what kind of data and from where do you use to help strategize the business and create fashion trends? So I guess the question is, what kind of data and where do you get this data from to help you strategize business and create fashion trends?
No, great. No, absolutely. I think there are different places where, as I was saying before, that we can take data from. But I think most important, it's giving you a good example. I think examples always help us to view it better. So we have a product today that calls Trender. So Trender is basically a product that we give to our ecosystem. So it's a product that we offer to our brand partners, so they can also have the insights from the data. And the insights can come from different places. So you can have insights on what are the behaviors and demographics that are selling better, the payment that people are using, so you can drive the right promotion. You can think of data that help you out to planning a bit better your assortment. So when you see what types of fashion and lifestyle products are being sold, so then you can have a better planning of these trends. I think these are some examples of data. So also you can, one thing that I think is important is to see the amount of sales that is being done. So you look a bit of the growth trend of certain categories. So you can start planning a bit more how demand can better meet supply. And of course, having a bit of waste of what are you producing, or what type of store of inventory do you have. So I think there are different data that you can have a look on. But I think mostly important is that make sure that you know the use case that you want to use this data for. So if it is for inventory management, there are going to be a bunch of data types that you need to collect. If it is to have a back the view of forecast of our sales in the future, you can look a bit more maybe for what are the behaviors and trends that you have inside each of the categories. So it depends upon what you want to do. But when it comes to fashion, I think there are two topics that are quite important. I think one is inventory management, and another, what are the behaviors and what really the customers are looking to. So when it comes to retail, I think it's really important to hear the customer, and there is no better way of hearing them than going deep into the data that you have and see what they're actually searching on the web page, what are the impressions coming from. So I think these are very important data that you need to start collecting and also having a better look into it.
Hello?
I think you're on with Doctor.
Sorry, thank you. I think you may have lost me for a few seconds there. Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yes, I apologize for that. So thanks for sharing. Those insights and the case and the use case as well, Quiron. Okay, so we're almost at the tail end. We've got about 6 minutes to end, and so maybe at this point, I'd like to just ask, if any of you have any advice to give to the people who are on the call today, from the women in participation in data point of view, as well as from the data ethics point of view, and how you use it in your business. So perhaps if each of you can just share your words of advice. Can I start with Dr. Fairoza?
Okay, for me it's like empowering women, something like that. It was like, for me, don't be afraid lah. It was like, if you want to go into a data science field, just go, just be yourself. And then I was like, don't be afraid of doing anything. We are women, we are multitasker and we can do it. Don't be afraid. Okay, so this is quite biased, but it's just like to encourage all girls out there. So if you are listening to this, don't be afraid to become whatever you want to be in the future.
Thank you for that, Dr. Fairoza. Dr. Jaspal, from a law and ethics and all of that, what advice would you give to women?
Thanks, Dr. Sumitra. Firstly, I feel, I'm sure some of the persons who are making the comments are a bit disappointed that some of their questions have not been addressed. I just want to tell them, please just look me up, Jaspal Kaur Sadhu Singh on LinkedIn, and please send me a question there. All right, really so sorry about it, so we have to wrap up. To me, I think, as a data ethicist, what is important is I think that data should work for women. The quality of the data that is collected from women should empower women, exactly in line with what Dr. Fairoza says, especially in terms of the future, in terms of the present and in terms of the future. A lot of data is being used, a lot of predictions are being made that affect women and in their lives. So we need to make policy decisions that affect women, and these policy decisions must be based on good quality of data. And when we are relying on artificial intelligence, which in turn relies on data, I think we must think about how this can bring great altruism to women. For example, are we thinking about how AI and data is transforming women and their lives? We have to think about how are we using data to resolve issues that are women-centric, apart from moving away from health issues like, breast cancer scanning and so on and so forth. But there's a big issue there. How is, for example, use of data which trains AI is going to take away work from women as we have increased automation. And there's so many women who are working in factories, in manufacturing. We need to ask these relevant questions. I think we should move away. Sorry, Quiron, we have to move away from just the commercial dimension, the business dimension. But I'm not saying that the data that you have collected, is of no use to what I'm saying. I think, as you've mentioned, data can be used as an enhancer. Data can add quality to life and, for example, sustainability. Okay, and women's role in society is far more complex and intrinsic and intertwined. And I think the men out there who are making policies for women have to be aware that the other half of the population has a lot to do with what's going to happen with a nation state. So I think we need to be progressive. And Dr. Sumitra, you are in an organization like MDEC. You can do a lot of engineering on your end. We need to start with drafting national strategies.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, in a gist, we should be driving data and AI for good. Yeah, that's what we should be driving towards. Thank you. Quiron, last words from you.
No, I think first, say a bit about what Dr. Fairoza said. I completely agree. Trust yourself. I think, be yourself, go there, and the data, tech, and all this space should be there for all the women. But if I would also say a bit for the men that are here today is that, listen, I think we need a lot to learn. So as I said at the beginning, it is indeed an honor for me to be at this panel because I hope I were able to contribute. But what I can say is that I have learned a lot today. And I hope all the men and the leaders that are here, they're open to hear, to learn, and to change also together the workplace that we have. And also a lot of questions here that we couldn't address. Feel free to reach me out. For on the business side that we discussed it, I think fashion or any of these things, look to the data in a good way, very ethical, and make sure that we have good use of that. But also make sure that you take care of the simple things of the data, and even more than look to the data, becoming the insights that you have into reality and to a better experience in the better point to your customer. I think at the end, we need to be ethical, we need to be sustainable, and we need to enhance the better experience to the customers. And for all the women, we do have some, I wouldn't say some, but a lot of positions open in Malaysia and at ZALORA. And I really encourage you to go to ZALORA LinkedIn page. I'm going to be more than happy to receive some women's profiles over there. So please, these are my advice.
Thank you so much. That's really action. I mean, that was a really action-packed panel, I must say. Truly action-packed, because it's not just that we got some very profound insights, but we got lots of action items, to offer to join women in data, women in AI and data, offer to apply for jobs in ZALORA, offer to, reconnect after this. It's unfortunate we don't have enough time, but there's lots of questions, lots of interest, and I'm sure that, we will all connect on social media and continue the conversation. On behalf of MDEC, we do have quite a few initiatives that are helping to reskill and upskill data professionals and AI professionals. We work with a wide variety of partners. We welcome partners to join us all the time. We also work to support businesses that are looking to adopt data to help drive business growth. So if you want more information on that, do reach out to us. As we said, Shariman and the team in the backstage, they're always ready to support you. Reach out to us or check out our website or drop us a note on social media. So again, with that, I thank you very much, all panelists, for joining us today and for your contributions, and to the audience for your active participation. So before we go, we're going to take so this is pretty cool. We're going to take a group feed, online. This is virtual style. So everybody just say cheese and look at the cameras, and then we'll go click. Ready, get set, go. Okay. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a nice day and a good weekend.